Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. I quite often make lists of all the different things I need to get accomplished on different projects. And I've been working on these Atlas 6x6 trucks. One thing that I did not have on my list, and it's just crazy, just a couple days ago I woke up and I thought, the wheelbase on these trucks looks too short. But I hadn't really thought about that before because it's a major job to change it. If you look back on the original truck that we're basing this off of, these 2.5-ton Army trucks, the GMCs, the most common truck made during that time was a long wheelbase cargo truck. And the long wheelbase truck, if a total production in the production history, about 572,000 trucks were made during this period of time. 518,000 were the long wheelbase, and 54,000 were the short wheelbase. And the short wheelbase ones were tanker trucks, semi-tractors, office trucks, but the majority of everything was a cargo truck with the long wheelbase. And in fact, most common it was the 12-foot bed, which is what we've scaled our bed to look like, and with the long wheelbase. So looking at the truck today, I've got the 12-foot bed on there, but this wheelbase here is really close to what the short wheelbase trucks would have looked like. Proportionally, this bed sticks out too far at the back. So this wild idea I had this morning was, what would it take to lengthen out this wheelbase? And that's what today's video is going to be about. Enjoy. I've been looking at these wheelbases again, and the bed which I have is probably proportional, but the wheelbase is off. In order for this to look correctly, it needs to be back about 1 more inch according to our scale. And if you've been around me much, you know that I have a tendency to never finish things and always make changes to keep making more and more improvements. And so that's exactly what I'm thinking right now, is I'm seriously thinking of lengthening this frame 1 inch. And a couple different reasons. One is for the wheelbase and the look, but two is now that we got to mount this winch in here somehow so that it'll go up underneath here, we need a little bit more. It needs to be actually back here lengthwise. So what I'm thinking is to cut the frame, lengthen it 1 inch, put the new bars across the belt, and then it'll be kind of like a 1 inch notch. Then this winch will then fit down into that notch where the 1 inch gap is, and it'll probably fit in the right spot. I'm thinking this also might be okay because now that we've raised the cab up a little bit, moving this, if we make the cut up here and move this back to make room for the winch, then this should be able to slide mostly up underneath the battery box and not be in any way. And all these trailing arms and drive shafts from the rear will be the same, because this will move back. We'll have to lengthen the front drive shaft and either lengthen these front trail arms or have a new mount for them. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to work on this idea. With the muffler guard removed, I can get to the 2 screws that hold in that center cross member. As I get this further apart, I can see what needs to be changed. And so what I'm thinking here is that this center cross member that holds the motor and the transmission, it will stay fixed to the rear, and it will, and the cut in the frame will be ahead of this. So it will move back an inch. So one of the drive shafts is going to have to be longer. But now I'm thinking that maybe this cross member, or this plate, whatever they call this thing right here, I can measure that and then print a new one that's 1 inch longer that has all these regular mounts back on it again. I'm going to give that a try. So my idea is that the winch will fit down in the new notch, and it's going to have to be ahead of this part of the cross member and above this motor. So I'm thinking of making the frame cut right here in line with the front of the transfer case, so that when this thing gets moved back, it'll fit down into the new notch, be above the motor and ahead of the transfer case. I would say at this point, I'm either very serious about what I'm doing, or this is a crazy idea. I don't think I've ever had this thing apart this far. Now we have bare frame rails and lots of parts. Okay, here's the crude cutting and drilling before I did any cleanup. But you can see the before picture here and the after picture. I cut it in a spot. I added this piece of flat bar to it, put the gap there at about 1 inch. And I'm going to do the same to the other one, doing some cleanup, and then see if everything fits. There's the spacers and the two frame rails. I bolted them together to kind of keep them symmetrical and straight. And I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup and then start putting the truck back together. Just thought I'd stop here a minute and tell you what's looking good and what looks like it needs a little more work. I'm pretty happy with the frame extension. I thought we were going to have to build a whole new carriage across here, but it looks like we'll be able to reuse the same one with the motor and the transmission and these bars, and it'll just mount further back. Only thing it's going to need is I'm going to either drill some holes through these new bars so I can bolt it in. I am going to have to build some kind of cross member in the front to mount these arms from the front axle. You know, one option would be just to make longer, that's an idea, maybe you just make longer these bars from the front axle to here. And also I'm going to need to make an extension on the front drive shaft. Probably maybe 3D print that piece right there. Another thing I also noticed when I put these bars here from the rear axle into these threaded holes, that they don't go in all the way. I have to make some holes all the way through these bars so that they can get through. And the same thing is true on this front one, is that this one here bottoms out against this, and I need to drill a relief hole for it. Other than that, I'm pretty happy so far with that. Oh, I forgot to mention the exhaust pipes, where they were, used to bolt right on through the side here like this, and now I'll need to make some new holes in here and bolt them on, maybe thread the holes so that they'll thread onto here instead of into the frame, so that will work too. Okay, before I get too far carried away, let's see. Now the winch, if I measured right, should fit down into that slot like that. What I don't know is if I'm going to have to notch, whether it'll fit inside the cab, but we'll find that out here. And we need to redo the mounts on this to get it to fit in the right spot. Actually, I wanted to disassemble all this anyway, because I'll show you, I just got in my countersink screws, so I need to do some countersink drilling in the end of these to get them to fit right. It was pretty brave to put that all together before I even tested it on the truck. But as you remember, right, we moved the axle back an inch, and I think the difference between this crossbar and this bar is about an inch. So now this should pivot from here. The cross member should fit, or this magnet one should fit here. And the cab is back there. So I don't have the mount for the cab, but the cab looks too far ahead. Let me take a look and see what's going on here. Just to recap what we did, here's the longer wheelbase truck. I got the cab sitting on there loose, and you can see the winch mounted here, or sitting here in this notch where the frame was cut. And then the bed is mounted differently, but it's proportionally. I need to probably get either new rails for the sides here, or re-drill these cross members in the right place, and then there'll be some extra holes there. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. But I think, and we'll probably need to redo the wooden bed so that the holes are in the right place for the new bolts. But I think that is going to look, and this is actually really close to the factory military cargo bed wheelbase now. So that's, I think it's going to be a success. Working on drilling the relief holes in these outer bars here, so that when I put the thing back together, the bolts will go through and not hit them. After drilling a 1.6 millimeter hole, tapping a 2 millimeter threads for the muffler to mount on the side of the frame now that it's moved. And a 2 millimeter screw just threads in there. Very nice. Here's another item I picked up at the garage sale. I'm thinking that if I'm going to be cutting more of those aluminum bars or frames, the hacksaw isn't really the way to go. I got this little mini cutoff saw. I'm not sure if this blade is good for the aluminum, but I think maybe there's more blades available, and it's probably not the best tool for this plastic, but I'm going to give it a try and see what happens. Actually, I think that worked perfect for what I was trying to do. I just discovered some incredibly amazing news. I think it is. The rear trail arms and drive shaft is almost exactly the right length for the new extended front end pieces. These are the ones off the other truck, and they're just slightly longer. And if I would have known this ahead of time, I could have planned my my gap by frame extension to be just perfect to fit this. So, but there it is, they're on there. I had to drop off that second trailing arm, that short one, to get it, the axle to be at the right angle. So I'm thinking I'm going to use them. The axle's going to be slightly forward, hardly any, maybe not even noticeable. But that means I've robbed more parts off of the other truck. But this just might be the solution, the long-term solution. Maybe need another parts truck. We'll see. I think the future to cutting these aluminum is with this little saw. I don't know if I got the right blade, but I'm going to give it an attempt here at my first cut. If you remember the hacksawing, this is so nice. So easy. Yeah, I think the hacksawing days might be over for some of this aluminum cutting. This might be pretty close to where the winch's final spot is. From a top view, you can see because one side of the winch is longer than the other, it has to be offset to the side in order to stay inside the cab. That means that the fair lead, or the center of it, is now off to the left little bit edge. And so I've tilted it, not tilted it, but I've angled it just a little bit so that the winch line is straight now for the front center where it comes through to the bumper. And it's down in this notch. And now that it's down in the notch, I put the controller back at its stock height again. So because now we can get underneath it pretty well with where the winch line will come out. So from the bottom, I don't know if you can see the details, but we got these little, here's an angle iron bracket here, and another angle iron bracket here, and they're both bolted up to the winch plate. The winch is at a slight angle, and I put this rod right here to show you that the winch line now has to come up through the middle, just to the side of the pitman arm shaft, right to the center here like that. So that's kind of like at a slight angle. And then when it goes into the winch will have to be at this point perpendicular to that winch line. So that's why it's at a slight angle. And that allows us to center the frame of the winch between the cab. And I'm thinking my next step here is to make holes through the frame right here on the sides so that these little angle iron brackets can be bolted on there. Pretty tight because it's around those muffler mounts and everything, but I think it's getting closer. To show you those angle iron brackets I was talking about, I'll just pull the winch here out of here, and I've got these angles bolted to the bottom of the winch plate. That's quite a shiny reflective bottom of that. And so that they're spaced at the inner frame rail width, right like that. So, and you can see they're kind of somewhat centered under the main frame of the winch. Got a lot done on this today. I want to point out a bunch of things. I got mounted the, let me zoom in a little bit here. We got the battery box back up where it goes. It's got a slight notch in it right here where it goes over the transfer case. It's not going to affect the battery because the notches are flush with the bed. It's still got a slight rise to it, so the cab's still sitting a little bit higher, but not as much as I was going to. The biggest change here is this notch right here, which isn't really a notch. It says just that we've cut the frame, lengthened it 1 inch, and then got these new aluminum bars here along the side to bolt everything back together. But in this notch, now I've got the winch mounted on these little angle iron brackets that bolt to this new frame rail. Lots of holes in the sides of this bar here. This is a relief hole for the trailing arm to bolt to fit through. These big nuts are the 8mm bolts that bolt it to the frame. These bolts right here hold the center cross member in with the transfer case and the motor drive. They used to also be the same bolts that bolted in the muffler, but since it's now 1 inch back further, there's new holes right here. And I got the muffler off right now just so you can see this. So now the muffler mounts in new threaded holes here. And these are relief holes here for the transfer case alignment pins. These 2 bolts are bolt into these angle irons that hold on to the winch. This is a reinforcement. Okay, this is the old hole where the front trailing arm used to be. It was so close to the 1 inch that I ended up reusing. This is okay. I'll skip to this part right now. It just so happens that the 1 inch that we moved was almost perfectly the same length of drive shaft and trailing arms here for the rear, and I just went ahead and used the same ones in the front. So the front's now, and this brings us back to this little location right here. This used to be where this front trailing arm, top trailing arm bolted to the frame, but now it's been shifted up here this far. So this is about how much far the front axle is now ahead of where it used to be. And this nut here is just an extra reinforcement for that threaded bolt that goes through there. And this is the other side. I've got the muffler mounted on this one here. So you can see all those same things that I was just talking about. But now the muffler mounts right there. Thanks again for joining me on this journey. You might say that today's project was just delayed all of the work that still needs to get done. But I feel like it was a good thing to do. I'm pretty happy with the longer wheelbase look, and I think it's gonna fit better. Still got a lot of details to go. I welcome you to keep joining us and follow along on this journey. Appreciate you all. Thanks for watching.